Well, hello there, and welcome to our podcast, Is This Art? Where we talk about production elements and some of the bigger questions about media and consuming media, whether you're the creator or just viewing it. My name is Catherine Fiore, and I'm joined here by Jed Hamill.
Hello, everybody.
And so Jed, what are we going to talk about today?
Oh, we're going to talk about so much creativity and the creative process. Speaking of the creative process, I've been having the song kind of ring in my ears. I don't know if you're familiar with an artist named Taylor Swift.
I might have heard about it.
Yeah, well, she has a song where it's talking about her being 22, and how it's going to be it's a great night to go dress like hipsters. So I don't know. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on 22?
So I gotta be honest, 22. It doesn't quite do it for me. I think 23 is my
yeah. So what are your thoughts on 23?
Well, the biggest one right now is that here at the Video Garage, we have a promotion called 23 in 23, where if you book a project with us, you will get a 23% discount between now and March 31st. So even if your project or your event, whether you're looking to start a new podcast, you have an overview video, maybe a product that you're launching, you have a course that you need to share with people, even if you're just in the pre-production process of it, we can help you. And if you book between now and March 31st, that discount still applies no matter when we end up filming. So that is our New Year promotion, 23 and 23. All right, so I think we can segue into what we're talking about today, which is a bit about a little creativity.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you tell me a little bit about our process with that. Like, obviously, we've talked about in the past about the discovery process, which is, part logistical, part kind of visionary, as it were. But just in terms of like bringing it into like a practical, tactical standpoint, where does the creative process start and how does that unfold on the Video Garage side of things?
Yeah, so I've talked about it in the past about when we do join a discovery call. And I do think that the creative process, it starts there in terms of our collaboration. Technically, I think it starts way back to when anyone has that first idea. It's just like, I want to know to be a great idea of something to make. Or like, I've really wanted to try this. That's technically like, I think the very start of the creative process, or when you see something and you're like, oh, I want to do that too. I want to do something like that. So that's the very start. But where we come in is right at that discovery call. So often we'll join the call and we just get to hear this kind of like these initial thoughts. And then from there, we can keep asking questions to kind of try and figure out what might be the details behind this thought. So I'm trying to think of a good example. One would be someone reached out to us inquiring about training videos. So there was a safety demo that they needed to. They were just kind of boosting up their e-learning platform for when they onboard employees. And so we were talking about it, and if they first join the call of, okay, maybe we can just set up a camera on the back of the the room that they do this demonstration in, and we'll just let it go over the course of the training. And so that's where we started. And then by the end of the call, we were like, actually, I think it would be best to have it actually be scripted, and then have someone present to camera, and you can have people come in and demo it, and it becomes more of this full production day that you go in with this schedule. And that way you're able to kind of create this really clean content instead of trying to have to work around potentially what's happening of just like people just learning normally. And that way the content stays very evergreen. And that whole process, like that's a form of creativity. You're figuring out what something might look like for your need or your use case. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's just I'm laughing because it was reminding me. I wanted to bring this up last time. I was going to make a joke about how either you or I knitted a sweater, because it reminds me of like the creative process. Like you have this thing that you want to create, and you have it. We all know what a sweater looks like, right? But like in order to knit it the right way, like you have to learn how to do it right. You have to do the right stitch and take a left turn for the sleeves. I don't know how you do it, but the point is like there are steps along the way, and you don't want a sweater. You want your sweater. You want the sweater that like speaks to you, and talks about who you are as a person, and like is the fashion that you want. So the corollary that I was drawing from that is that, when I think about our creative process, it's not just that different projects are different. Like an animation project is different than a live stream, which is different than a demo project, which is different than interviews with folks about the culture, right?
or a documentary
Right,
or
exactly. Like it's just there are a certain level of differences between project to project, but the within that, there are you need to figure out a way to find the unique elements that differentiate you, your message, your product, your service, your art in some way, or in some ways. And I think that when I think about it, it's like, well, so for example, like if we're doing like a live stream for like a demo day or something like that, the client is not just looking for us to just capture what they're doing. It's they want to do it in a unique and interesting way that has a bit, that stands out, that
mhm.
feels like them, that
Mhm.
feels like their style, their pace, their tone. And it's not just, well, we have cameras and equipment, got it. Like, no, it's you need the cameras and equipment, but you need to utilize them in such a way that you present the product, story, idea, message, service in a unique and differentiated way that is in alignment with not only what they are, but what they want to be. And, I think that's kind of the fun of it, is that while we might take the same steps, we don't end up at the same location, the same destination. While we're all knitting a sweater, each sweater is different.
Yeah. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about just working in this industry too, is like you can do like your only thing if you wanted, you could only make overview videos or you could only make training materials and you could just do that every single day. But the nice part is where that creativity comes in is you can, like you said, adjust it a little bit every single time and do something a little bit different or figure out what is specifically for that brand or company that makes them unique.
Yeah, and I might be jumping ahead of the topic here, but it always reminds me of this idea of like, what is creativity?
Oh, that might just be. I think we might have to. I think you're right on the point there. With I think it's time to kind of broaden the focus a little bit, and dive into our block B. So yeah,
Block B.
block B, with our kind of main question that's kicking it off, which is you just said it.
Well, because I mean, I think it's a very interesting thing because kind of growing up, when the people that I know and talk to talk about creativity, it's not the art of creation is what they talk about. It's this idea that whatever you created needs to be special or unique or interesting, which interestingly enough, if you create something from yourself, then by definition, it's unique and special and unlike anything else.
Mm,
But there's this idea that it's creativity is more than just creating something. It's creating something of value. And to me, I think that has changed. Yes, let me just finish this talk real quick. Is that it's changed a little bit. It took me a while to really get it, or just to change my perspective on it. Because I think that you know, like coding, for example, is an act of creativity, right? It doesn't feel in my I didn't grow up with coding, so it's like it doesn't feel the same kind of creativity. But my belief now is that if you there's innate value in creating something, and if you want to, the way that you be creative is that you create, and that seems obvious, but there's a stigma of this idea that in order to create, it has to have some sort of special value to it. And my scenario is to bring it back to it is that like the simple act of creation is the value. That's the game. It doesn't have to be because the funny thing is like, what is it art? Like is it good, bad, otherwise? It's in the eye of the beholder. You can find 20 people who love it, 20 people who don't like it. You're gonna love it one day and not love it the next day. But the goal is, are you creating something? And that's the value. Not are you creating something of value?
and I think that's such a big, or at least maybe like my personal enemy about my relationship with creativity is it's that question of like value. It's just like, oh, but is it good enough? Is it quote unquote creative enough? Is it
Yeah.
unique enough? And I was talking to you about this last week. This is kind of where this conversation stemmed from, or at least for me, was that I felt really lost in that process. I was getting stuck. I wasn't creating anything because I was like, oh, I got no ideas that are quote unquote good enough, or I just don't feel like a calling to anything. And it felt very dry and stale for me, and it was really bothering me. And I remember your words clearly. You were just like, the second that you're scared to create, you lose. And so what does it mean to be a creator? Well, you create. We say it all the time of, well, you're a runner if you run. Doesn't
Right.
matter how fast, doesn't matter how slow, or if you're a trail runner or a sprinter or an ultra marathoner, like if you run, you're a runner.
What you're describing is that people feel they attach either identity or personal self-worth or external validation to that, right? So like when we say if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
if you're a runner if you run, and the where that came from is this idea that like I do run, but like in my mind I'm like, you know do I wear the same clothes? Do I have the same interests? Do I look the same physically as the runners that I know? And the answer is like that's baloney. Like you if you run, you're a runner, and if you create, you're creator. And I think the gap or the thing to think about is again, one is that the value is not did what I create valuable. It's the act of creation is in itself innately valuable. And the second piece is I think you hit on is that like creativity I think doesn't need to be this, but I think it's great when it is when you have something that's inside you that you feel like needs to be out in the world, either for yourself or for the rest of the universe, like as a way of a point of connection or of understanding or of universality or a way to share a bit of yourself with the rest of the world so that they can be a fuller, richer, human or have a fuller, richer experience.
Hmm.
That's why you're being creative. Is not like, is this thing good? Is this art? Is this whatever? It's no. It's like this is something that was inside me that I wouldn't feel right if it was not out in the world.
Yeah.
And not to, I'm not trying to segue it back to kind of corporate video or what we call it corporate video or just video production or audio production or whatever we generally talk about here. But I do think that there's a corollary in that if you believe in your product, if you believe in your message, if you believe in what your company or your story or whatever it is, the thing that you're trying to present, if you believe in that, then you probably have your own reasons for it. But that's the innate value of it. The trick is to not just, once you get over that, the hard part is to simply express yourself in a way that feels authentic and that resonates with others.
Oh, that's so hard though. Oh, that's so hard to the process of figuring out how to express yourself authentically. That is
But we,
I feel like that's like almost like a trial of like like that is the trial of life. It's just like how do you present
well,
yourself?
but I think that I don't know though. I think it's easier than you think. I think that
Okay, maybe it's just maybe I'm like I'm in the
no,
phase where
no,
all right.
I just what I mean is that like I'm not coming back at you. I'm saying that like I think there's a piece missing there, which is that it's not that people have trouble expressing themselves authentically. It's that very often people have trouble kind of owning their authenticity. So like, and the thing I can tell you is, I mean, the things that kind of set me free is that I would make these films that I thought would be amazing, and like, that everyone would love or whatever, like, or just like, like I'm just like, oh, I can't
That
like,
value piece
yeah,
again.
right, the value, and then like you realize that some people like that's the thing that you liked, like, and you're like, because I didn't think that was great, and then the things that I think are like going to be amazing, they're like, no, that doesn't resonate with me. And what you realize is that everybody's on their own journey. Like you don't get to control them. Like, and this is really true. I was at one of my favorite film festivals in Venice Beach, called the Other Venice Film Festival. It's very small but rarely local film festival. It's been around for a long time. And so I was showing this film, actually that I shot with Roger, who's the CEO of the Video Garage. And there was this young man who came out, and he goes, he just walked. He says, I want you to know that that film was life changing. And then I had another person review it, and they say, well, they went on and on. Like it was kind of like hilarious because they went on a really detailed look at the film and all the reasons why it didn't work, right? And so what happens with art and what happens with creativity is you get to decide what voices you listen to, whether it's outside voices or your own inside voice. And what you realize is that, again, that you cannot control what other people think or feel about anything, let alone your art. And again, you don't feel, I promise you, you will not feel any better with 1,000 views or 1,000,000 views or 2,000,000 views, like on your YouTube. You're not gonna feel any different. You're gonna be excited. They're like, I wonder where this is gonna go. Like, but
Yeah, who's gonna see
yeah,
it?
but eventually it's like, no, like you just want to have some dude at some film festival be like, yeah, that film changed my life. And it's like, well, who knows if it did,
Yeah.
but at least it took the energy to do it. And like I've had people give me notes about how they like this film. And then I've had people give me notes of the exact same film. It's like literally, don't put this out yet. It's gonna hurt it's gonna hurt your career because it's not technically good enough. And I guess my point is that if you if you're trying to be creative, you create and you let the chips fall where they're made, because the goal is not so much to get anyone to like your work or like you or to say that you're great or say that you're whatever, because that's never gonna, it might happen, but it rarely happens. And when it does, it's not going to feel as good or as bad as you think it is.
Mm.
It's about taking something that's inside you that you don't feel right about if it's not out there. and that you feel like it's either going to help the world or it's going to feel like you're more connected to the world or make a statement about the world, but to let the universe know this is who you are, this is what you stand for. So I don't think it's hard about people being authentic. I think it's hard with people being worried about being judged by others.
That's definitely at least for me, that's a big piece of it. I'm sure there are creators out there who maybe it doesn't play as much, but I have a pretty good feeling that is definitely a big element, that judgment piece. This is a piece, kind of everything that you've been saying, that I almost view as it's falling into tune just with your own melody and then composing it and
Yeah.
sharing it with the world a little bit, or just for yourself and having it exist in a space. And the other piece that I think of too with creativity is that I think ideas are fragile. I think that once when you do get that tune and that melody that you feel internally and you hold kind of in your hands and you're like, all right, I see this. I want to share it with the world. I think then the process of bringing like a team together to do it on a larger scale, that can be tough. And merely in the sense of it's sharing this vision then and this kind of little piece of creativity and then continuing to nurture it with multiple voices. In like large scale productions, I think that sometimes it can go,
Yeah.
it can get lost.
Yeah, I would say again, I don't think that it's tough. I think you do that all the time. Like literally, like you, Catherine, do that all the time. It's that you add this piece of meaning to it or consequence. And so the other piece I want to say is that like when it comes to like say you're doing like we're doing this documentary or you're doing your own film, like if you're
Mm.
just doing art for the sake of art, you just do whatever you want. But when it comes to doing art that's like intended for an audience, right? So either you have to bear in mind that audience, and if you're doing it because someone invested in you, you can't just like I'm going to do whatever I want and like hope it turns out. Well, if someone's investing in you, you hopefully you have some understanding that like you have to honor their investment and try to make that money back. And so it's a balance. And I guess I see your point that it can be difficult to kind of wrangle, a big project. It's not just you sitting in, in your room just noodling on things. But I think that you're like, oh, this sounds good. I don't know, but like that's I think it can while it can be difficult, like it brings so much more value to bring other people into it and like to bring it into a specific scope is that we're doing this documentary on a band and we have 5 people all with differing opinions and points of view and perspectives and desires and agendas and all this kind of stuff uh, that need to be voices those voices need to be heard, and it just takes patience and respect and an understanding that everybody, it's not just abstract like everyone's voice should be heard. It's that that these folks you're working with kind of share a vision. It's something like we were talking about last time. It's like we share a vision in some ways, and then we have different vision in other ways. And so I think that it's a matter of deciding that there's that it's worth the kind of the time it takes to be patient with each other and to go through it. And I will say also is that like I want to make it clear that when I talk about if you create, then you're creator or you're creative, and that you should just do your own thing, which I think is true. But when it comes to like making films or making art that's like intended for an audience, you can kind of just do whatever you want, I guess. But like ideally, I'm trying to reach the biggest audience I can um, without losing my vision of what I want to see. But that brings me back to the original, where the point that you're mentioning was that when you have a bunch of people who have strong ideas and strong vision who share like a baseline essence of what we're going for, it can be a complicated process to sift through everyone's opinions to understand what we like. But if it's something you really believe in, it's something again that you have to get out to the universe because for whatever reason, then it's easy enough because you believe in the mission. You believe that this thing needs to exist and you can't do it on your own. And you shouldn't do it with just, this is what I think, it's great. It should be a shared vision, and it should be with the audience in mind, and it should be with the something you should be able to communicate your message and the story in such a way that that it will resonate with a wide audience. And you're not just being like, all right, this is my answer, whatever, deal with it. Like, no, like you should take time and energy and effort to make sure you reach as many people as you can. Because if you care about that story, you care about that mission, it only helps you to reach more people.
Mm. In the back of my head as you're going through all this, was I had a friend ask me a question a few weeks ago, and it's been kicking in the back of my head of like, let's see how I feel about this. And they asked me if I think like can you be truly creative in a corporate environment? I was curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. You know, I think a lot of people do ask that. Can you be creative in a corporate environment? And there's a lot of other kind of nuances to that. But I guess my answer would be the answer is yes. And if we look at it from perspective of what we just talked about, is if you are creating, then you're creative.
Mm.
Then the answer is yes. Two, I would say that if you are, in my experience, most art or content of any kind that you are creating for an audience is much better when you collaborate with others. And if that's the case, then um, you're not going to quote unquote win every creative battle. You don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to. That
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense.
So the point is that you want to have different voices be heard, even within the one singular thing you're trying to create. And the third thing I think you're hitting on is what we talked about originally. Is like that's like an old school perspective, I think, and I don't mean that as a negative way. I just think that it's like what I grew up with. It's like when we talk about creativity, what we mean is that we're taking this entirety of who we are, putting it out in the world, and saying, "Judge me and tell me that I'm great." Like that's what creativity is. Like that's the motivation for what a lot of people do. Like they want to create for other reasons than that. But a big part of that, the thing that's the attachment part, is that in order for something to be creative, it has to be all me. And that's never the case. Like you can write and direct and produce a script and act in it, but still there's a whole other team of people who affect that.
Written by, produced by, directed
Yeah,
by.
right. Even then, like and if you look at half of those, I mean, the vast majority of
Some creators do prefer that though.
yes, and I guess, but that's
That's
fine.
separate.
That's fine. But I guess the scenario is that one is if you create, then you're creative.
Hmm.
Two is, I think, in my experience, for what we're talking about, collaboration with a team of like-minded individuals, even people who don't always see eye to eye, can create some great art. That friction, that contrast. And I will say also that there are different kinds of art and different kinds of creativity. But I would say that if you are creating something with the intention of showing it to an audience for their needs, then almost always it's better to have a collaborative approach. And it doesn't need to be all about you. Like this is the essence of myself. This is my soul. I'm burying my soul. There's always a place for that in the universe. But it's when I first started out, I only wanted to do indie films, right? And then I wanted to work in TV, and I did that, and I worked in studio films and all this kind of stuff. I also did my own stuff, where I was like basically the key creative force, and the feeling that I got was always much better when I collaborated. But that's beside the point. I guess the thing I'm trying to drive at is this: is that when I first started doing corporate video where people paid me to do something business related and not just creativity for my own interest, um, I had the same question. And what I found is like there is great art and there's great creativity and there's like uh, there's just really a kind of a honorable kind of creativity in helping somebody bring their vision to light. And you get to be, it's like all the thing we talk about. We talk about all the stuff that we enjoy about working with our clients is that it's not just that we get to see them day to day and kind of have that human experience. It's about taking this thing that they believe in or that they are putting the vast majority of their energy into to get out to the universe. It's an honorable position for us to bring that story, that message, that product to life through our creativity. So my short answer is the answer is yes. But I think again the broader question is, again, is it true that if you're creative, if you create? And two is to be really honest and really clear about if you're doing put this way, is that I have so many friends who are comedians or actors or musicians, and really what they really want, and I'm not talking generalities, I'm talking specifics. I know very specific people who say this. They're not interested in um, doing anything other than present themselves as they want to be presented.
Mm.
But if you do that, then you can't be upset if people don't necessarily vibe with you. Like if you if you find that balance between this is me and I'm considering the audience and considering the platform and considering what other people might find interesting, if you can find that balance between what you want to present and what you think will be resonate with others, then you'll find your audience. But it's a rare occasion where someone is so spot on, like in their natural state, that they hit the zeitgeist of what everybody wants and everyone thinks is great. And especially now, I still think it's the thing that people get hung up on, and I'm hearing from you is honestly is that that there needs to be something like
Nuanced.
no new, like there's this math of like it needs to be good or new or
Fresh.
something that
Yeah.
someone has never done before.
Yeah, I
Right?
think about that like so much. It's like, what's the new trend?
Right.
What's the new dance? What's
And-
the new effect?
And the question is, why does that matter?
I don't know.
I think it's because we like there's a spectrum here, but my answer is that it lends itself to this idea that you are part of something bigger than yourself, and that you are like you said, you're singing your verse, your verse of the song, and there's just really great art is art that is very often built on loss or not being understood, right? And the fun of it, or the cool thing about it, is when you realize that you're resonating with people who also feel misunderstood. In
Yeah.
that process, they're understood. So I guess the thing is that I think there is kind of this human or societal pull to be part of the community, to kind of stake a claim to like your part of the verse, and then plus there's just like a huge kind of like expectation, depending on your upbringing, of you're Ricky Bobby, either either you're first or you're last, right? Like you want to, like, I did this thing.
Yeah.
And if you're,
I definitely like
yeah.
I carry some of that with me.
I
Yeah.
think everybody does, and it's not even bad. It's just that, like, I don't think that great art or creativity has anything to do with other people liking or not liking it, or resonating with not resonating with. I think it has to do with you putting your true self out there and finding that balance between trying to connect with people on their level and letting the chips fall where they may. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So if we were to kind of pull things into focus a little bit, I think our baselines is we have that in order to be creative, you create. And that's just like, that's the baseline. Welcome to the party.
Boom, 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 boom. Boom. That's my baseline.
And then another element of it is creativity in its sense of when you really feel that passion is when you have something that kind of comes up in your heart and you're just like, I want to share this with the world. And then you kind of pull it out and you hold it there, and you can share it on any masses, or have it kind of, it can go to 1 million people or it can go to 2 people, and that you're still being creative.
Yeah.
And then that last piece that you're just saying about, I mean, you put it really well. Do you want, yeah, how did you put that?
I don't remember, but I have one other thing I was going to say is that, like, I will ask this question of you is, really think about the projects you've done in the time you've been here, and think about how good it feels to get a day right, like a production day, like to get it out, to make it happen. And then think about how proud you are and how good it feels about the videos that we create, and say to yourself, does it matter whether 1 million people saw it, or does it matter that I saw it?
Or how like,
Yeah.
whether it's like super new, it's like the hottest trend.
So you did it again. That's the thing, is creativity
Yeah.
doesn't mean new.
Yeah, I know.
We all do that. Like, so
Yeah.
what we really want is, we want to, like, there's a piece of creativity where people want to be unique, to show that we can be unique. But this is, again, like, we are all unique, whether we like it or not. Like, there's a lot of things that are similar to us, but we are unique whether we want to be or not.
And I think an interesting topic for the future would be potentially like the audience's perception and their role in it, and one's creativity. So maybe we'll have to dock that one and add it to a future podcast episode. But thank you so much for chatting today about creativity and the process, and answering some of the questions that have been kicking around in my head a little bit. But I greatly appreciate it.
Of course. Until next time, everybody.
Bye.